Every brain food listicle names the MIN diet, a Mediterranean-hybrid pattern. The 2023 New England Journal MIND trial, 604 adults, average age 70, 3 years of intervention came back with no significant cognitive difference between the diet arm and the control arm. The same research group's 2015 cohort on the same foods had shown 53% lower Alzheimer incidence. Same foods. 2 answers, 8 years apart. None of the listicles mention the trial. Over the next 22 minutes, 7 foods ranked the ones every listicle names by what was actually measured in adults over 60, not popularity. Evidence weight. Starting at number 7. The February 2026 JAMA release of the 43-year coffee and tea cohort, the first one to separate caffeinated coffee from decaffeinated in the same analysis, is the cleanest new piece of brain food evidence in adults over 60 to land in more than a decade. It drops into a research landscape where most of the top search results for brain foods for memory after 60 collapse the evidence into flat lists. Leafy greens, berries, fatty fish, nuts, olive oil, whole grains, coffee. 7 foods. Every listicle names roughly the same ones. Healthline, Harvard Health, Mayo Clinic, and WebMD all converge on overlapping versions of this list. What almost none of them do, and what this video does, is name the cohort. When a study gets cited, the listicle says, "A study found," the cohort age, the sample size, the follow-up duration, and whether the trial was an observational cohort or a randomized controlled trial, an RCT. Those details get trimmed. That trimming is the difference between evidence you can apply to a 72-year-old body and evidence you're borrowing from a 40-year-old body and hoping it still works. A lot of the cognitive decline research cited in brain health listicles over 60 was actually gathered on middle-aged nurses and biohackers. The extrapolation to a 70-year-old is almost never made explicit. The methodology here is specific. 7 foods, ranked by how well the primary evidence actually lands in adults over 60. Each one opens with its primary study's cohort description: how many people, what ages, how long followed before the finding. Each one closes with a drawback sentence that names what the study didn't measure, or who it doesn't apply to, or where the accessible evidence stops short. The ranking isn't by popularity. It's by how clean the 6-0 plus evidence is when you stack the primary cohort description next to the finding and ask whether the two match your age band. The Rush Memory and Aging Project, the Chicago cohort that has followed older adults through food frequency questionnaires and annual cognitive testing since the late 1990s, shows up twice in the ranking, at number 1, and inside the interlude before it. That's not a coincidence. It's the cleanest 6-0 plus brain food dataset in the English language literature. It's also the team whose 2023 randomized trial just walked back one of its own 2015 observational findings. 2 answers from the same research group, 8 years apart, on the same foods. Hold that in mind. It comes back at the top of the countdown. Number 7. Whole grains. In 2019, the Advances in Nutrition Review by Nishi and colleagues summarized the state of the evidence on Mediterranean, and MIND diet patterns and cognitive decline. Whole grains are on every listicle of brain foods for memory after 60: oats, brown rice, whole wheat bread, farro, barley, quinoa if you count the pseudograins. The review's verdict on the composite patterns was consistent: higher adherence, less decline. The question is where the whole grain signal sits when you pull it out of the composite. When the reviewers drilled into individual food groups, whole grains did not hold up on their own. They appear as an input to MIND's 15-item score. They're a component of Mediterranean adherence. They show up in dash scoring too. But in the 6-0 plus evidence specifically, they are almost never the finding. A 2021 Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience follow-up by the same research group was blunter. MIND, it noted, is less extensively investigated than Mediterranean and DASH, and the whole grain signal in particular is heterogeneous when isolated. Different cohorts, different measurement methods, different baseline intakes. The lifestyle consequence is simple. If your morning oatmeal is doing cognitive work, it's doing it as one of 15 items inside a composite diet. Score a bundled food pattern, not a single food, and not as a standalone intervention. That's not a reason to drop whole grains from your plate. It's a reason to be honest about what the 6-0 plus evidence actually shows when you isolate them. Whole grains open this list at number 7 because the listicle vertical treats them as if they had the evidence weight of leafy greens or berries. They do not. Before we turn to entry 6, the drawback on whole grains. No standalone 6-0 plus trial isolates whole grains. The signal only appears inside composite scores like MIND. Number 6. Walnuts. 708 free-living adults, aged 63 to 79, randomized to eat walnuts at roughly 15% of daily calories or to a walnut-free control diet for 2 years. 2 sites: Loma Linda, California, and Barcelona, Spain. The Walnuts and Healthy Aging Trial, WAHA, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2020, is the first long-term whole food cognition RCT in older adults anywhere in the English language literature. That's a meaningful distinction. Most nutrition trials on brain outcomes are short, small, or surrogate-based. WAHA was 2 years, 700 people, whole food, cognitively healthy elders at baseline. The headline finding is the one every brain food listicle skips: no overall cognitive effect. The primary endpoint, a global cognitive composite, showed no statistically significant difference between the walnut diet arm and the control diet arm. Post-hoc analysis, done after seeing results, suggested possible benefit in higher-risk subgroups at the Barcelona site, where participants had lower baseline cognition and more smokers. That signal did not replicate at the Loma Linda site. The lead author, Alex Salavila at Hospital Clinic Barcelona, put the primary finding plainly. Walnut supplementation for 2, we had no effect on cognition. Short. Direct. That verdict belongs in this countdown because the null result is the finding, and a ranking of brain foods for memory after 60 that hides the null is not ranking by evidence, it's ranking by listicle convention. A handful of walnuts is still a reasonable heart health choice. It's still a good source of alpha-linolenic acid and polyphenols. It's not the brain food insurance the listicle promises. Before we turn to entry 5, the drawback on walnuts. The 2020 WAHA trial found no overall cognitive effect. Subgroup hints exist, but the primary result was null. Number 5. Coffee. Caffeinated, specifically. The February 2026 JAMA publication by Zhang and colleagues followed 131,000 adults across the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study for up to 43 years. It's the longest food-related dementia cohort in the English language literature, and the first one to separate caffeinated from decaffeinated inside the same analysis rather than pooling them into coffee. The top quartile of caffeinated coffee intake showed 141 dementia cases per 100,000 person years, against 330 in the lowest quartile. The dose-response curve bottomed out around 2 to 3 cups a day. Past 3 cups, the benefit flattened and the U-shape started coming back up. Decaffeinated coffee, separated for the first time at this scale, was not associated with a lower dementia risk or better cognition in this cohort. That separation is the reason coffee makes this list at number 5 instead of number 7. Caffeinated and decaffeinated are routinely collapsed into coffee on the brain food listicles. They are not the same signal in the 2026 data. The lifestyle consequence is concrete. If your morning cup is decaf because it's easier on your sleep, the 2026 data says the brain benefit doesn't come along for the ride, at least not in the NHS and HPFS populations. A half-caff or single-cup caffeinated pattern is closer to where the JAMA curve shows benefit, and well short of where the curve starts to flatten. Before we turn to entry 4, the drawback on coffee. The dementia risk curve is U-shaped. Benefit flattens past 3 cups, and the 70-plus subset is not separately reported. Number 4. Olive oil. 92,383 adults. 28 years of follow-up. That's the Tessier cohort published in JAMA Network Open in May 2024, the single largest dementia-specific cohort finding on this list, and one of the largest on olive oil in any disease context. The cohort drew from the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. Participants reporting more than 7 grams of olive oil a day showed a hazard ratio. A hazard ratio is relative event risk over time of 0.72 for dementia-related death against those who never or rarely used it, 28% lower. The effect size sits in the same neighborhood as the caffeinated coffee finding from the previous entry, which is part of why the two are adjacent in this ranking. 7 grams a day is about half a tablespoon, the drizzle on a salad, not the bottle you go through. It's a tractable daily amount, not a prescription. What makes this entry sit at number 4 rather than at the top is a different detail in the same paper. The finding held regardless of overall diet quality, measured 2 ways: the Alternative Healthy Eating Index, or AHEI, and the Alternate Mediterranean Diet Score, the AMED. That's unusual. Most cohort signals for single foods track with overall diet quality. People who eat one good thing usually eat other good things. Tessier's olive oil result did not collapse into a diet quality proxy. It means the olive oil signal is not a stand-in for "this person eats well overall." It's an independent signal in the 6-0 plus evidence. Anne Julie Tessier, the Harvard T.H. Chan School postdoctoral fellow who led the study, described the finding carefully. Not only support heart health, but potentially brain health as well. Cautious language. The caution matters. This is a cohort study, not a randomized trial, and the word potentially is doing load-bearing work in that sentence. EVOO, extra virgin olive oil. The form studied in the Predimed trials is the specific form most of the trial evidence is built on. A 2013 Predimed Navarra sub-study of 522 high vascular risk adults, mean age 74.6, found that a Mediterranean diet enriched with extra virgin olive oil improved cognition compared with a low-fat control diet. That's 2 independent cohorts and 1 small trial, all pointing the same direction. The 2024 paper is the one that anchors the ranking. Before we turn to entry 3, the drawback on olive oil. The 60-plus subgroup hazard ratio is not separately reported. The overall 2-8-year finding carries the ranking. Number 3. Fatty fish. In April 2023, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published the WEIGH meta-analysis 48 prospective cohort studies. 103,651 participants combined across North America, Europe, and Asia. It's the largest dose-response synthesis of omega-3 fatty acids and cognitive decline to date. The Nurses' Health Study contributes. The Framingham cohort contributes. The 3-city study out of France, the Rotterdam study out of the Netherlands, the cardiovascular health study in the United States, they all contribute. Pooling that many cohorts into a single dose response curve is one of the more consequential brain food synthesis efforts of the last decade. Here's what the curve looks like. Each 0.1 gram per day increment of DHA, a long-chain omega-3 fat, was associated with 8% lower risk of cognitive decline. Each 0.1 gram of EPA, also a long-chain omega-3 fat, was associated with about 10% lower risk. Taken together, higher dietary omega-3 intake tracked with roughly 20% lower dementia or cognitive decline risk. That's a cleaner curve than any other entry on this list. Not a flat, eat more fish. A per gram dose response, with the confidence intervals sitting squarely on the lower risk side of the line for both DHA and EPA. 2 servings of salmon a week, sardines on toast, a small tin of mackerel. Those are the food patterns that cluster near the higher end of that dose curve in most cohorts. Without supplementation, without fish oil pills, without prescription dosing. Different locks, same outcome. DHA and EPA reach brain cell membranes through distinct incorporation pathways. DHA concentrates in the phospholipid membrane. EPA acts more through inflammatory resolution, and both track with lower decline in the pooled analysis. What keeps fatty fish at number 3 instead of number 2 is that this is a meta-analysis of cohort studies. It's pooling associations, not running a single randomized trial at scale in adults over 60. And it pools cohorts with different DHA measurement methods, dietary recall, blood phospholipid levels, cell membrane percentages, red blood cell omega-3 index. Each method captures intake slightly differently. the ApoE for stratification, and the upper limit of where the dose-response curve turns linear rather than continuing to climb, remain underspecified in the accessible synthesis. The direction of the finding is not in doubt. The precision is. Before we turn to entry 2, the drawback on fatty fish, the meta-analysis pools cohorts with different DHA measurement methods. ApoE, for stratification and upper linearity limits remain underspecified. Number 2, berries. The Nurses' Health Study has been tracking dietary intake in women since the mid-1980s. A subset of 16,010 women aged 70 or older was followed specifically for cognitive aging, and Elizabeth DeVore at Brigham and Women's Hospital published the memory finding in Annals of Neurology in 2012. Women in the cohort who ate at least 1 serving of blueberries a week or 2 servings of strawberries showed delayed cognitive aging by up to 2.5 years, compared with women eating less than a serving a month. The stronger signal was in the blueberry arm, though both fruits moved in the same direction. DeVore's own phrasing in the hospital's release was careful. We saw a modest reduction in memory decline. Modest, not miracle. The word matters because the listicle vertical routinely inflates this finding into blueberries' reverse memory loss, which is not what the paper says and not what a reasonable read of the two. 5. Year delay. Supports. A 2021 neurology paper by Tian-Xin Ye at the Harvard T.H. Chan School pooled over 77,000 NHS and health professionals' follow-up study participants and examined long-term flavonoid intake against subjective cognitive decline, self-reported memory, worsening, highest versus lowest total flavonoid intake, tracked with an odds ratio of 0.81. The subclass driving most of the berry signal was anthocyanins, the berry-colored flavonoid pigments, though flavones across citrus and celery showed even stronger associations. Ye's conclusion was plain. Our findings support a benefit of higher flavonoid intakes. Strawberries, oranges, grapefruits, citrus juices, apples, pears, celery, peppers, and bananas were the food sources the paper named as carrying the bulk of the flavonoid load. The 6.0+ specific evidence on berries sits at number 2 because the DeVore cohort is specifically women aged 70 or older. The age band, most other entries on this list, cannot match directly. Before the interlude, the drawback on berries. The DeVore paper reports direction and 2.5-year magnitude. The exact blueberry coefficient and the full covariate list require the full article tables. 2 findings, the kind this channel keeps returning to as the reanalysis pile. Same research group at Rush, same foods, the same mind diet pattern built from Mediterranean and DASH scoring. The 2015 Morris paper in Alzheimer's and Dementia, using the Rush Memory and Aging Project cohort, 923 older adults aged 58 to 98, followed an average of 4.5 years, found that the top fifth of mind diet adherents had 53% lower Alzheimer incidence. The observational signal was clean. Morris also compared mind adherents head-to-head with Mediterranean and DASH in the same cohort. Mind came out ahead on cognitive endpoints. That was 2015. The result entered the listicle ecosystem almost immediately and has been there since. 8 years later, the Rush team published the first 3-year randomized trial of the mind diet in the New England Journal of Medicine. 604 adults, mean age 70, overweight at baseline, all with suboptimal diets and family histories of dementia. Lisa Barnes, the lead author, captured the result directly. What we saw was improvement in cognition in both groups. The qualifier she added, not significantly better. Both groups lost weight. Both groups improved. Neither improved more than the other by a statistically meaningful margin. That's the reanalysis pile. The 2015 cohort number is in every brain health listicle over 60. The 2023 trial is in none of them that the search results surface. Different questions. Both valid. One tests a long-term habitual pattern over decades. The other tests a 3-year intervention under caloric restriction. Neither is wrong. No listicle carries the tension between them. And now, number 1. Number 1. Leafy Greens. Neurology. January 2018. Martha Claire Morris. The Rush Memory and Aging Project. 960 participants, aged 58 to 99, mean age 81, followed a median of 4.7 years. Daily food frequency assessments paired with annual cognitive testing across 5 standardized domains. The contrast, the paper reports, is the cleanest single number on any brain food list in the literature for adults over 60. The highest quintile 1.3 servings of leafy greens a day, roughly a cup of cooked spinach plus a handful of arugula or kale on the side, declined cognitively at a rate equivalent to being 11 years younger than the lowest quintile, at 0.09 servings a day. 11 years. That result came from everyday food, not a supplement arm, and not a trial protocol intervention that required adherence monitoring. Just leafy greens, counted in routine weekly questionnaires. The nutrient breakdown the paper reports matters because it's specific. Food folate, the B vitamin involved in methylation, carried the largest independent signal. Phylloquinone, vitamin K, one from leafy plants. Lutein, a carotenoid, concentrated in greens. Nitrate, alpha-tocopherol, K-ampherol, a flavonol found in leafy greens, and beta-carotene were all independently associated with slower cognitive decline, each through its own biochemistry. None of them work through the same pathway. The spinach in an omelet carries folate. The kale in a salad carries lutein. The collards in a stew carry phylloquinone. The arugula on top of pasta carries nitrate. Different locks. Same outcome. What keeps this entry at number 1 is also the limitation worth being honest about. It is observational, not randomized. No RCT has tested isolated leafy green intake against a control diet in adults 60 plus. The Rush Memory and Aging Project is one cohort in one city, followed for one set of years by one research team. It's a clean signal with a single institution behind it. It is also the cleanest 60-plus leafy green finding in the English language literature, and no study since has challenged it directly at the scale or with the follow-up duration Morris had. That's why it sits at number 1. The drawback on leafy greens: it's observational, not randomized. No RCT has tested isolated leafy green intake against control in adults 60+. That's the ranking. Here's what stays. Here's what stays with me. The foods most often named in brain health listicles over 60 split into 3 tiers in the 60+ evidence. One tier has clean cohort data at the age band. The viewer actually lives in leafy greens, berries, caffeinated coffee, olive oil. A second tier has an RCT that walked back an earlier observational finding, the MIND diet, and walnuts. A third tier is still writing extrapolations from midlife cohorts, fatty fish on dose response, whole grains inside composite scores. The pattern isn't which foods are brain foods. It's which foods were actually tested in the body the viewer lives in. The synthesis work, putting the Leafy Green Neurology paper next to the MIND trial, next to the JAMA coffee cohort, next to the WAHA null, is the thing the listicle vertical is structurally bad at. That's the whole project of this channel. Next week, the follow-up video looks at which of these same foods have the cleanest 60+ cohort data for blood pressure.